when I come to consciousness and I like freak out, right? And I'm like, what is going on? Someone like pins me to the table. Like it was
Oh
it was very traumatic.
Should we go to the hospital? And I'm like, it's fine. And she's like, look at you. It's not fine.
Because you were choking, but you were choking not in a way that the Heimlich maneuver could resolve, but something a little more sinister. Hello and welcome back to the Deskwarmers podcast. My name is Matthew.
And hey everyone, I'm Ike again. What do we have in store for us today, Matthew?
Well, Ike, seeing as how our previous podcasts have done so well, I wanted to bring another friend back from Japan to interview. How's that sound?
Great idea. I think we'll have one every week.
Yeah, I think that's what we do, isn't it? That's what we've been doing.
Yeah,
it's worked so far. And today, coming to us from, well, actually, I don't really know where she is right now. We have Rayana. Everybody welcome Rayana. Claps all around.
Oh my gosh, what a warm welcome. Hello.
Yes. How are you tonight?
I'm great. How are you guys?
Pretty good. It's a little cold.
not bad.
It is a little chilly.
Yeah. So where are you coming from?
I am in Pennsylvania right now. East Coast vibes.
East Coast vibes, so it's cold there?
It is quite chilly, yes.
Now, Ray, you're only in Pennsylvania, though, for a little bit, right? What have you been doing since the JET program?
So after JET, I came back to Pennsylvania for about a month, and then I went off to Spain for graduate school. I'm doing a master's in international education, and the first semester was in Spain, so I just finished like a week ago. I haven't even been home for a week, actually.
Wow, so you've been busy.
Yeah.
Jeez,
Very busy.
What is Spain like? I've never been.
It's very European.
I would assume, yeah.
The weather is wonderful. The people are very nice. Lots of Spanish. The food is great. A lot of smoking, though. Wasn't a super fan of that.
Yeah.
But other than that,
now,
Spain is amazing.
I had, back when I was at university, I had Spanish roommates for 3 semesters. No, I think 2 full years, rotating in and out just in a program that I did where I would host Spanish roommates. And have you adapted to the lifestyle? I just want to phrase it like that.
Yes and no. Like, I didn't adapt to the Spanish timetable as far as when we eat is concerned. They do the super late dinners that are at like 10 p.m. And I'm like, this is not working for me. It's too late. I'm gonna have nightmares.
Yeah, it was.
But I appreciated the super laid back. We work to live. We don't live to work. Culture.
I love that.
That's great.
I feel like that's a big difference than Japan for sure. And
very drastic, yes.
And not to brag or anything, but I mean, I lived in Spain for a solid 2 weeks, so I'm also really, really knowledgeable about Spanish customs.
This guy had his own host family who tried to kill him.
I'm sorry, what?
They did feed me nuts on my very first morning. There was a cereal called Nutty Crunch, which they could not read, and
oh no!
And I thought it was Frosted Flakes, but it definitely wasn't Frosted Flakes.
Did you pour yourself a bowl of Nutty Crunch without looking at the box?
They poured me a bowl of Nutty Crunch, but I mean, I was really glad that Japan had so few nuts, though, because I mean, nut allergy, if you haven't picked that up, but
I mean, there were a few nuts when we were there. Crazy guys.
Well, yeah,
Ray, you're included in that.
Oh, okay.
But back to you, Ray. Like, going from Japan, like America, Japan, Spain, which one of them do you think had the biggest like culture shock for you?
I couldn't even say that Japan had a culture shock for me because I'd been there twice before the JET program, so I was like, I went in knowing what to expect. I've never had like a crazy culture shock moment when I've been traveling.
Yeah.
I think that's like maybe a unique thing for me because every time I go anywhere, it's always like culture shock, guys. Be careful about culture shock. And I feel like I've never had that experience.
I think for the three of us, we had ample opportunity to travel abroad around college, maybe even before college and high school, maybe even before that. And which I'm sure each of us had very incredible experiences, but throughout my life, I've heard when traveling, beware of culture shock. Oh, are you okay? If you're applying for the JET program and you're worried about culture shock, I have news for you. The JET program wants people who will adapt easily to their environments. And I think that might be one of the largest barriers to entry, or one of the largest factors that when you're doing your JET interview, they're going to be on the lookout for.
I can definitely be a big selling point for yourself as well, one of your strengths. I think for me, I also, similar to Ray, never really had like a significant culture shock experience. The closest I ever got was actually when I was just coming back to the US for one of my family members' weddings when I was living abroad in Japan. And on my way back, and I'm just in the airport, I'm back in the US airport, and I'm looking around and people are just so much bigger, like taller, just like louder in the US. And that was the closest I got to like reverse culture shock, where I even just walking around the airport, I was like overwhelmed because it was something like very different than what I had grown accustomed to.
Yeah, it's like, sorry, Darren on the cell phone. I don't need to know about your wife's stomach issues. Please be quiet.
Yeah. I will say, I think Spanish people are louder than Americans.
Really?
Wow.
For sure.
That's actually crazy. I didn't know that was possible.
In my humble opinion, and not even in a bad way, they're just very loud.
From my experiences in college, I can agree. There was a lot of with love wall bang, like be quiet. I know you guys just got home from the club. It's 2 a.m. All the clubs closed. I'm very sorry. Put on your little YouTube video of flashing red, yellow, and blue lights and just continue your music, but do it in a respectful way that doesn't wake me up. Have fun, but, think a little bit.
Totally agree.
Now, Ray, you were in the JET program for 3 years, right?
Yes.
And during that time, you actually didn't live in Kumamoto with the rest of us. You lived in a different prefecture.
Yeah, I lived in the neighboring prefecture, Oita, in a tiny little town in Oita,
Wow.
I was in Kumamoto quite often, but I did not live there, contrary to popularity.
Cross it off the map. We have another prefecture unlocked. Oita Prefecture. Yes. It borders Kumamoto, like Ray said. And it wasn't too far of a drive because like we saw you on the weekends, not frequently, but often, I think.
At least once a month I was there.
Yeah. I feel like about 2 hours of a drive or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a 2-hour drive.
Now, when you were going to Beppu, I feel like everyone thinks like hot springs and like tourism and stuff, maybe even within Kyushu, the southern like island. But did you have that similar experience living in Oita, or was it a bit different?
I did not live in Beppu. I'd been there plenty of times. Beppu is lovely.
On the coast, sand baths.
Yeah. Wonderful. Hot springs. If you're into hot springs, go to Beppu. Like you have to. But I lived in a tiny town in Oita, so I did not have that Beppu experience. It was very rural. Not crazy, not super Inaka, but if you didn't have a car, it was a little difficult to get around.
I feel like it was slightly more Inaka, like countryside, than our town that we lived in.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I would say so.
And you even had fewer ALTs, right? You had, how many did you say lived in your town?
So including myself, it's always hard. I think the maximum we had at one time, including myself, was 5.
Wow.
Yeah, we had like 15. So
it was, anywhere from like 16 to 18 for us. So that's a lot less. But
Yeah, there's not that many schools in the town that I lived in.
Mm.
There were there was 3 high schools, maybe like 4 or 5 elementary schools, middle schools. Like it's really
And
not
you
big
were
at all.
a prefectural ALT, is that correct?
Yes, so I was in high school.
A compatriot.
I taught at 2 high schools.
one of us.
I know.
One of us.
Someone who understands my experience.
Yes.
I was the only prefectural ALT in my town.
Wow.
Was that difficult for you to be in a town that had so few like foreigners or so few like ALTs as kind of a support network?
Yeah, I would say yeah. Luckily I had like you guys, so it wasn't a huge deal, but there were times when it was kind of like lonely, especially being the only prefectural one, because it's like the city jet experience and the prefectural jet experience are 2 very different beasts. So just being in a town where it's like nobody understands your experience because no one else is doing it except you.
Yeah.
It was like a little frustrating sometimes.
And what were your best ways that you dealt with loneliness?
Going to Kumamoto.
So finding,
traveling.
finding
Yeah.
friends to do stuff with.
Yeah, and I did hang out with the Jets that lived in my town. Occasionally, we did hang out. They were cool people as well. So
Yeah, I can
good.
imagine it's challenging. I mean, you were lucky that you actually knew some of the other ALTs from our town. You all came at similar time, and so that's how you kind of found another friend group to join. But I can definitely imagine the day-to-day or week to be a lot more challenging without having people around.
it's a little lonesome. Yeah.
Oh man, that's interesting that you bring that up. Rihanna, you arrived in Japan at the same time and in a similar location to 2 of your other friends. Is this correct?
This is correct.
Speak to
yes. So they were the 2 people that you've actually already had. on your podcast.
Great, Bethany and Paige.
Wow.
Yeah, and I knew them pre-jet. We had met on a different excursion. I met Bethany when I was in university. We studied abroad at the same place. And Paige, we met when we did an English teaching internship in Nagasaki. That's when we all met. And then we all applied for jet and somehow got placed in the same vicinity as each other in the same year, which is like insane.
That is crazy. I mean, for the 2 of them, it's insane.
It's even crazier.
that they both got put in the same exact town because
Same apartment
complex.
same
Well,
apartment complex. You look at like one of the people who replaced one of the leavers from our town. She came in and she applied at the same time as her boyfriend, and they're at 2 separate sides of the country. And
That's, I feel like, the typical.
I know that there are some exceptions that can be made, but it feels really random. And they must have seen that, okay, these 2 people, they're from similar backgrounds and they both did this experience in Kyushu. We're going to put them in the same town. And for you included, in Kyushu, we're going to stick you back in Kyushu because you know how to deal with those hot summers.
Now,
Yeah.
Ray, did you all 3 of you put the same like preferences to your areas, or is that how you think they kind of had this lucky experience? Or
I think we all put Kyushu at the very least. But I do think it had a lot to do with us all doing that internship in Kyushu beforehand.
Yeah.
Like Matthew was saying, like, oh, these 3 people have already experienced Kyushu. And clearly they liked it because they're trying to come back.
I wonder if there's like a rift or like some kind of separation where the people in Tokyo think Kyushu is just this otherworldly beast that they send.
It's like not even Japan.
It's not even Japan.
People definitely think that though.
Actually, I took a Japanese history class, and I think there is like an East Japan, West Japan divide, cultural customs.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Now, I guess so. I also, similar to Ray, I had an opportunity to come to Japan before moving there, where I had a summer in Tokyo, and so I lived with a host family in Chiba for about 2 months. And I know you and a few of the other friends that we have on the podcast, you all lived in Nagasaki, but was it super different coming from this kind of like more like for fun, just like temporary experience to actually like moving there, like for your life, or for several years.
Yeah. I think I probably went into it mistakenly with the same mindset,
Huh.
but it is a very different thing.
It's a little more work.
It's a little more work, and it's also just, it's different. Like living indefinitely, because you can choose to recontract or not recontract versus like a program like studying abroad. There's an end date, like our internship. There's an end date, and it's after a couple of months.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there is an end date on the JET
yeah.
program. However,
there is,
if you're not,
but it's much longer.
and if you're not
variable,
even in the JET program, like other like Eikaiwa employment opportunities where you're teaching at like an after school language class, there are people like I think there were people in our town who were like, they did the JET program and then they stayed in our town and they continue to do that. And they're on their 15th year in Japan and they were still there.
Yeah. We had a few people that were, they had stayed there after the JET program. And that is what we found. I think in future podcasts, we'll have some people that like actually stayed in Japan, but you do find that that's the best way to continue living there, or at least the easiest is to just sign up for another like English teaching opportunity. And a lot of those are owned by more like private firms, and the working hours are different. The pay is sometimes even less than the JET program. You'll have to work weekends. Like it definitely, your quality of life goes down if you are not within the JET program. I feel like
this is the word on the street.
Yeah. This is what I've heard. I mean, I'm sure if you love Japan and you want to stay there, you can definitely make it work, but it is different. Like the JET program does a lot of things for us as well.
100%.
So
like finding your housing and all of that.
Yes.
Ray, were you helped in a way where that you felt satisfied by the people in your support system?
Year.
Some years were better than others.
Yeah, it depends on what year we're talking about. If we're talking about my first year, yes. If we're talking about my last year, not so much.
Oh,
I feel so sorry for you in hearing about all the troubles that you had.
Yeah, my last year was kind of a lot.
Would you like to share any of these kind of troubles you ran into?
I don't know if you guys like specifically talked about the whole April teacher scramble that happens.
We haven't talked about that at all.
So basically in April, I think it is April of every year, your teachers will get shuffled around different schools within the prefecture. So it's very likely that you won't be teaching with the same teachers that you taught with in your first year and your second year. Or at least some of your teachers are bound to be leaving and going to a different school. And in my experience, you will find that the atmosphere of your workplace changes, obviously, with the profile of people that you are working with. So it just, my last year, let's just put it nicely and say I didn't vibe with a lot of the people that came into my school for the last year. Had some issues.
Yes, that teacher scramble is a very big point of contention. I had a coworker who I ended up working with on my last year, my final year, and she drove like 2 hours across the prefecture for work.
Wow.
Every day to work and then back home from work.
That's horrible.
Terrible. I'm like, you better load up a bunch of podcasts. And she's like, what's a podcast? And I'm like, well, maybe some audiobooks.
Yeah, that's crazy, especially with the way that teachers work in Japan too. Like basically like 7 to 7 out here. And you're driving 2 hours every day there and back.
Yeah.
I cannot imagine, because like Ray is saying, so how the Japanese year works is it's called a ki, and it's from the start of April to the end of March, basically every year. Wow. And that's when, the transfer happens. And everything changes. So the desks change, so you get shifted around sometimes as well. And it's typical that teachers only actually stay at a school for like 2 to 3 years before they get transferred. There's only like certain very rare exceptions where teachers will stay for longer. The only time I really had that happen is we had a teacher who got nominated as a super teacher, they called it. And he was so good at his job, and he was actually an English teacher, and I really liked him too. He was very, very talented, but he ended up staying at my school for like 10 years or something.
Yeah, the super teacher at my forestry school was a chainsaw sensei, and he taught me how to use a chainsaw. It was very nice.
That's awesome.
He was just he knew so much about forestry and like land management. It was crazy. He was trying to tell it to me, but I didn't speak Japanese. Anyway, you were saying.
Yeah, I had one JTE who was there the entire time that I was there.
Yeah. And even since Matthew and I were in the same city in both prefectures, one of my teachers got shifted to Matthew's school, and there was like a lot of transferring going on. So, but I know what made that last year so difficult for you, Ray? Was it just the vibes, or was there kind of other things happening?
It was the vibes. It was like the way that people were interacting with me. Like they didn't feel like they needed me in class. So I spent most of the days just at my desk, not going to class, not talking to anybody. Like in the seasons when you should be going to class, you know, my teachers were just like, "Oh, we're busy." Like, so maybe some other time.
When they feel like they don't know how to use you in class, maybe that could be
they just don't.
Yeah. Interesting. I also had that with one of my teachers who just, you know, some of them just don't like working with an ALT and want to be the one in the class leading the lessons, and it can be challenging. And I know for you as well, like your prefecture gave you some difficulties with things like sick leave, or even when you were moving out. I know you had the tatami incident.
The tatami incident.
Tatami-gate?
Yeah,
Tatami-gate.
That was crazy.
What was that like?
The day-by-day updates were funny.
Yeah.
Tatami-gate was crazy. So basically, I lived in subsidized housing. So my housing was really cheap. It was a very large apartment for just myself. And I never signed any contracts when I moved in. I have verification that I was never shown any contracts. I was just walked in, I was handed a key, and I was been like, okay, cool. And I was like, all right, I guess that's what it is. And as my term was ending, all of a sudden I'm getting told I need to pay to replace the tatami in my apartment. And I was like, what are you talking about?
And it was pretty expensive too.
Yeah, it was like almost Rokuman yen.
Wow.
60,000 yen.
Not what you want to see when you're already worrying about how am I going to get my stuff back? Like, what am I going to do with all this?
Especially in my case where I was like, I have to go back to America and then a month later fly to Spain to live there for 3 months. I don't have money for this. So that was a whole thing. It was a lot of back and forth with the prefectural board of education, asking ChatGPT to help me write an angry but professional email.
And what was the resolution of this like incident?
I just ended up paying for it.
Wow.
Because I couldn't. But they did admit that they never showed me a contract and I didn't sign anything.
When they were
that was
vehemently like, yeah, we showed you this contract, you signed it, you agreed to pay for the tatami.
And I was like, you absolutely didn't.
Yeah.
They were trying to make a liar out of me. I really didn't appreciate
you
that
stood up
energy.
for yourself.
I did. And then there was a moment where one of my JTEs called, I guess, who was in charge of the apartment and was like, did you ever show Ray Sensei these documents? And they were like, no.
That's insane.
Oh my gosh.
I feel like our contracts were not like too long. It wasn't too thick of a document pamphlet. And I feel like our Tantoshas, the ones in charge of us, didn't really look through them. And also, though, our contracts didn't really have a lot in them, though. So there was a lot of times where they wouldn't know what to do and we wouldn't know what to do. And so it becomes a kind of like... It's
like left up to interpretation. It's very intentionally vague.
So then they're just like, well, this is our rules. And I'm like, we don't have the same contract, fam. Like,
I might have gotten out of a payment, Ray, that I still feel a little bit bad about to this day.
That they expected you to pay?
We had, relative to my subsidized housing, we had this like garbage man type thing.
Gosh.
And well, I don't know.
He wasn't a garbage man.
Outside our house, someone would put out all the various ways to sort the trash. Because in Japan, you have to sort your trash. You have to put everything.
And you have to do it right.
A lot of recycling bins,
Yes.
battery bin, ceramics bin,
Everything.
used and broken electronics bin, light bulb bin.
Oh, there was no bin for us for that. You had to take your broken electronics to the dump.
Well,
Pay for them to be disposed of.
Yeah, our apartments had some guy that would, I think, put out these bins, and then once a year he would ask us to pay him for his services, and it just comes in the mailbox as a thing that just says, "Hey, like you owe," and it's about like, I think it was about like $200-$300 maybe.
Yeah.
What do you think, Matthew? Something like that.
Yeah, something around that.
And the first year I paid it, and the second year I'm like,
Why
thinking
am I
more
paying?
on this. This is kind of suspicious. I'm like, because you drop it in one of our neighbors' mailboxes.
Yeah.
The envelope of like $300 you put in their mailbox, and I never see that money again. I see nothing else about this.
Ike, that guy was the apartment manager. That's it's his job. He sets out the bins, but he also is in charge of cleaning the shrubberies and like trimming
I
the
had one of
hedges.
those
Not that he
guys.
ever does it. Changing the light bulbs in the hallway that would always go out.
The amount of cockroaches outside my door, I don't think he did a very good job.
Cockroaches, dude.
Oh
my gosh.
They
you
would
had
just
so
die
many.
on the steps. I don't understand.
Okay, honestly, I would sweep them down because I lived on the second floor and there was a stairway. I would sweep them down the staircase or like kick them down the staircase as I would go.
And then they'd end up in front of my door.
The truth comes out.
But I never paid the second year, and I felt a little. I kind of forgot about it, and then like a little bit went by, and I was like, oh, I never did that, and then I kept waiting though. I was like, well, if he gives me a second like kind of letter or notice or something, like I'll do it. But nothing ever came, and so I just never did it. I don't know. Not saying that
Good for you.
the listeners here should do this, but I yeah.
If someone tells you to pay something, just do it.
Should probably
Just
pay
don't.
it. Yeah.
No. I considered.
You know what?
I
Question
considered-
it if it seems suspicious. I'm going to give you that. You question it, but you probably should have asked somebody like, I don't know,
Yeah.
It was weird.
a coworker.
Yeah. Usually,
I considered not paying for the tatami.
Yeah.
It was a thought that crossed my mind.
you did the
but
better thing.
Midnight
right?
flight.
It became obsolete because my JTEs just showed up at my house the day that I was supposed to leave and demanded the money. So
Oh my gosh.
That's awful.
That is so
I'm like,
crazy.
you're lucky I had it on my person because I don't even have a car anymore at this point to go get money.
But speaking to as well the different like prefectures or different contracts as well, it seemed like your prefecture in Oita, they had less of a grasp on certain like concepts. Like we had Byokyu, right? Like your sick leave. And they would always like fight you about Byokyu, it
Yeah.
felt like.
They didn't even think that Byokyu was a thing. So the first time I said Byokyu, they were like, what is that?
But they have
was
it
like,
as
what do you-
well.
Apparently they don't.
Do they not have it for their teachers?
I don't think they did at my school.
So Ray, instead of the teachers taking Byokyu, then are they just taking the typical like paid time off, the Nenkyu? Is
Yeah.
that
So
what they
like
have to do?
Sakamoto sensei needs to get his gallbladder removed because he's got an infection there. He's using Nenkyu?
Yeah.
Wow.
I think the only time I heard of a teacher having like significant leave that was paid for that wasn't vacation was he literally had like an aneurysm
Oh my gosh.
and was like
my.
out for like 2 months.
And then they're like, we'll take care of him.
they're like, I guess. Like
wow.
You're pulling our leg on
But
this
they-
one. But
they were very much
twisting my arm. Sorry.
Yeah, they were very much like, even if you were in the hospital or should have been in the hospital, it was like, that's Nenkyu. And I'm like, that's crazy. But
So-
eventually I started to get Byokyu, but it was a battle.
It was an uphill battle
At
that you
first.
fought.
So those first
Yeah.
times you actually had to use your Nenkyu, they forced you to, or
Mhm.
wow.
to go to like the hospital. Were you sick or something?
So I had a kidney stone, actually.
Oh. Ouch.
I can attest because I rode in the ambulance with Ray during her
Really?
kidney stone. Yeah.
Should we tell that story?
No,
Yeah,
you guys
you
have,
have
to.
to.
Wait, I wasn't there for that.
Oh, yeah, this was pre-Matthew.
I'm glad there's a pre and a post, Matthew. Well, I guess I'm not dead yet, but please.
Oh, God. I think I had gone to Kumamoto that weekend. We had all just been hanging out, doing whatever. And I had already been having like weird pain in my side, but I was kind of just being like, probably pulled a muscle or something. Like, it's whatever. And at some point we had come back from like a night out, and I was just laying down like agony. Like,
You
just on
looked
the
like
floor.
you were ready to die.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever felt pain like that in my entire life. And I was just laying on the ground, and this was at Bethany's apartment actually, and she just kept saying like, should we go to the hospital? And I'm like, it's fine. And she's like, look at you, it's not fine. So she ended up calling an ambulance. So they were gracious enough to come in the ambulance with me, and that was quite an experience.
Well, the thing about I'll dive into some more detail here, and feel free, Ray, to add anything that
Can
you
I stop
want,
you
but-
quick?
Yeah.
What's the number for the ambulance in Japan?
119.
Got it.
Let's go.
I didn't call this.
I actually don't know for
even
sure,
know.
but-
I actually didn't
I
know.
think
Sounds
it's
right.
reverse. I think it's reverse.
Is it 911? Wait, no, it's not
It's
911.
It's 119. Anyway.
I heard if you have a US phone and you dial 911 in a different country, it automatically
Oh,
redirects to the one in that country.
that's kind of cool.
So that's for police. However, the police and the ambulance numbers were separate
oh.
in Japan.
And
Oh yeah, you're right.
the other thing about like going in an ambulance or just having something happen in Japan is you cannot just go to the hospital. You cannot get in your car, drive someone to the ER, hop out, get emergency care. Like, I mean, I'm sure they'd help you if you did, but it's something where you actually have to call the ambulance first. And this happened to me twice, actually. I rode in 2 ambulances in Japan, which I'll share next, but
I also rode into.
oh yeah, I remember that as well.
Ike,
We'll take turns.
I'd
We'll take
love to
turns,
share
right?
one of those for you, Ike.
Oh yeah, okay. You can share. Yeah,
I'll
next.
share your story for you.
It sounds like I'm sharing Ray's, and then Ray can share her final story. Is that
And then
fair?
I will
Okay,
share
yeah.
yours.
All right.
Yeah.
So-
Okay, we got it down.
we got it. We figured it out. So Bethany calls the ambulance. They come. Ray, Bethany, and I get in it. I think you can only have 2 passengers or something, and they don't leave the parking lot. This is where I was, and I didn't understand what they were doing, but they are calling the hospitals. And so this is why you can't just go to a hospital in Japan. They are calling to see which beds are available, which hospitals have capacity. And so in our city, there was like 2 or 3 hospitals. They're calling them. They finally get approval from one. But this whole process takes maybe like 30 minutes or something that we are just not moving in the parking lot. And I'm like, can we not just go? Like, can we not
I'm
figure this
dying,
out? Yeah.
by the way.
Ray is on the bed, like squirming around and stuff, like in agony. And the whole time, these people pull out their Google translators, and we're doing our best to communicate with them. And I mean, keep in mind, we know some Japanese, and they're just mostly speaking. They're mostly translating. But the 2 questions that they kept asking Ray, they would say, "Are you pregnant?" She would say no. They would say, "Do you have COVID?" She would also say no. But these were the only questions they could ask. The only
I swear
questions.
they did not ask me anything else.
They did not. For the whole 30 minutes we're in this parking lot and on the way to the hospital, those are the only 2 questions they asked. And
Yeah, just, are you pregnant? Are you sure you're not pregnant? Is there really no possibility that you could be pregnant?
And I really don't understand. Like, it made no sense. And even once we get to the hospital, they ask these same questions. We did have insurance through all of our schools and through the JET program. So that was nice. And they also offered another bonus of the JET program was accident insurance. So you could pay back some of that hospital bills. And to finish off the story about Ray, though, is she's there. You stayed there for one night, right? And they figured out you had the kidney stone. And
it was just a couple of hours. We didn't even stay the whole night.
Okay.
Oh, really? Did they release you at the end?
Yeah.
Wow.
And
they didn't give me anything.
And yeah,
but that's another
they
story.
They won't give you antibiotics. They won't give you medicine. Like I have a lot of Japanese friends.
Oh, because you have to go to the pharmacy for that, right?
They didn't give me a prescription for anything. They gave me some weird injection that made me feel weird, and then they
send you on your way.
My way.
Here's this green juice. We call it the substance. You'll be back.
But it was such a rough experience to survive through, where it felt like they weren't doing very much, and then even when we got to the hospital, it was like challenging, and I mean, yeah, it felt like they asked a lot of irrelevant questions. I know at one point they asked something about like, where was Ray's car or something, and we had taken the ambulance there. Like, I don't understand how this doesn't get passed on. And I also mistaken the question and said I've never been to Oita. But that's another lack of my Japanese level. But
you're the best at Japanese in the world. I don't know what you're talking about.
Ichiban jozu.
It was so funny because when he said it, I feel like it took me out of my pain for a second, because I was like, what? And Bethany was like, what? And all the doctors and nurses were like, what?
They were like asking about cars, and I'm just like, Oita ni ita koto ga arimasen. I'm just like, I've never been.
I've never been to Oita.
I don't know. It was rough.
And it was so funny because so that was when we were all still in the same room, but we were in the hospital at that point. At one point, they take me away to like a private room.
Yeah, they kicked us out.
Where they gave me that weird injection. But they also, again, in that private room, asked me the same question. Where is your car parked?
That's crazy.
And I got pissed at that.
There was
said something in Japanese.
There must have
like,
been a
can
reason.
you go ask someone else?
Why are they asking that question?
There was no.
I don't know.
No like path of communication from the ambulance to the doctors in the hospital.
Interesting.
At all.
All right, Matthew. It's your
happens.
turn. What's the next ambulance story?
Well, all right. So
because I wasn't even here for this, so I've never heard like the full detailed story.
Last year, I had a friend almost die. His name is Ike.
It was me.
I almost killed him. So let me bring you back to that day. I remember it very well. I was sitting at my desk and I was very sad because my friend had been talking about potentially leaving the JET program, breaking contract.
I had already applied for the next year.
You had applied for the next year in January, right? However, your significant other wanted to come back to America, and she had not applied for the second year. She had not renewed her contract. So you're like, well, I could either stay another year or, do long distance or go back. And I'm like, you wouldn't want to break your contract. No, don't break your contract, man. And every week, or at least a few times a week, a few times a month at least, we would get together and do a taco night. Group of friends watching either a movie. Sometimes it was House of the Dragon. Most often it was some like trash TV, The Bachelorette. I think we watched 2 seasons of The Bachelor.
We watched
in
a lot.
Total.
And Mexican food's hard to find as well, so we really looked forward to these days.
It was like the best day of the week where I could see all my friends, because you don't get to see everybody all at once, especially as prefectural ALTs. We don't get to see each other a lot. So I had looked forward to these nights a lot, and we hadn't really done a Mexican food night, a chimichanga night, a taco night even in a long time. And I'm like, it's going to be okay. We're going to have taco night tonight. Ike is going to have so much fun that he's not going to break contract and leave the JET program. I'm not going to lose my friend. Okay?
I've never heard this depth. Wow.
It was all a ploy.
So I'm like, okay, you know what? I will make the taco meat for tonight.
Oh, God.
And I think my first mistake was buying that chewy Australian beef.
It was Australian beef.
It was straight from Wagga Wagga down under. Straight Australian beef. Spending time in Sydney and Perth, all the way in Western Australia. Anyway, this beef was holding a boomerang when I got it. Let's just say that. And I took the beef over to Paige's apartment because that's where we were doing the taco night. What was it? Bethany's apartment.
One of them.
It's
One of the two.
Apartment,
they
basically.
look the exact same. And I'm cooking this taco meat. Everyone's having a good time. Somebody's preparing the pakuchi, the cilantro. Yeah. So the people preparing the cilantro, cutting the little tomatoes. Everyone had their own little job, shredding the cheese, and everyone's gonna get together. And I'm like over there cooking my meat, and I'm like, oh, this is like a interesting cut of meat. I've never interesting. And the meat is finished. And I'm going to cut the meat. And maybe it's also my fault that I didn't cut the meat into small enough little bites.
These were strips.
Because famously, Ike has a childlike throat.
A CST is the condition. Child-sized throat. Yeah.
It never evolved past like 3rd grade. So he's... us here with our big boy and girl mouths, and we're just chewing our food like normal people. And Ike, also attempting to chew and swallow his food, caught a very large piece of steak in his mouth.
And this is a sign of my intellect because I choked on 2 pieces, but yet I kept trying to eat it. And on the 3rd piece, this is what really did me in.
Yeah. We're all sitting down. We're eating our tacos. We're watching The Bachelorette, and we start to hear like a few coughs from Ike, and we all look over. I've got a taco in my hand. He's got half a burrito stuck in his mouth, and he's like, and then he starts violently coughing. And we're like, oh, haha, it's too spicy or something. He put a lot of hot sauce on there. And then he starts coughing even more. And for some reason, it gets funnier. I don't know why, but I was laughing a lot. I think this is a defense mechanism because you were choking, but you were choking not in a way that the Heimlich maneuver could resolve, but something a little more sinister. Ike, what was going on in that throat?
So I later find out it wasn't my throat, but my esophagus. So it's pretty deep, and I cannot get this piece of steak up or down.
It's lodged.
And it is stuck. I am trying to get it out, try to drink water. But the thing is when I try to drink water, my throat actually like closes because the water like pulls up on the steak and then like comes out. Anyway, too much detail.
And even Sean had run across the street and bought a Coca-Cola from the vending machine, brought it back, and you were trying to do that, and you were just spitting it back up,
trying to get that like Coke acid to like decay the steak or something. But
you could breathe. You could barely
I could breathe
talk.
the whole time. Yeah,
it was very labored, and it did get to a point where we were like, "Oh my gosh, this is getting serious! Like, what do we do?" And you sat, I think, for an extra 30 minutes. We were trying to get it out before we ended up calling the.
I think total
ambulance.
It was about 30 minutes before we called the ambulance. Yeah.
Yeah. So the ambulance arrives, I think, 5 minutes later. And it's always a fun sight when the ambulance comes into the apartment complex or wherever you are, because you get to see who's still awake and who's like opening up the blinds. The botchan across the street is like,
yeah, that's universal.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what country you're in.
Yeah, everyone wants to know.
And Ike, that's where you get in with who rode in that ambulance with you?
Bethany, and then. Or no, actually it was Sam and Austin were the two.
Okay.
So they rode with me to the hostel, but it was the same thing as Ray, where we sat there for 40 minutes in the parking lot, and same thing. Like they're like, "Are you sure there's actually steak in your throat?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure." As I'm like throwing up into a bag, like my saliva every like minute or so.
It was tough to watch.
And they don't really do anything in the ambulance, same as before. We get to the hospital. Once again, though, the weird thing was they were like, "Oh, we'll do like a CT scan on you." But there's someone in front of you in the line. And so they just sat me on this bed, and then everyone kind of just walked away. And so no one's even like looking at me, helping me. I like will like cough or like have some like sounds come out, and no one even like looked at me. It felt so like weird. And after a few minutes, I also asked the nurse, I was like, can you go get my phone? And so then the nurse brought my phone, and I had a bunch of like death texts to my friends. Like, I'm dying here. It was good content. But
I'm dying.
But I get the CT scan. They're like, wow, you really do have steak stuck in your esophagus. And then they call like a specialized doctor who comes, puts me out, anesthesia, fully out, pushes the steak down the throat.
They use a camera for that. They use the camera probe, right? They use
the camera to stick it down. And apparently the other thing too is
such a fun story.
Like we were mentioning earlier, Japanese medicine is not as strong as American medicine. And I think their anesthesia was also weaker because I have a blurry memory of me coming to consciousness. And the thing I think is still in my throat when I come to consciousness, and I like freak out, right? And I'm like, what is going on? Someone like pins me to the table. Like it was very traumatic.
And meanwhile, I'm back at the apartment with like Bethany, I think, and we're watching the rest of the episode of The Bachelorette and finishing our talk. We're like, well, what do we do now?
And the last thing I remember before I went under too is the doctor said some really like Japanese anime like line to me or something before I like went under. He was it was something really it was really traumatic. I don't know. He was just like, see you on the other side or something, but it sounded really intense.
The heck?
Oh
I don't know, but I survived. They kept me in the hospital for 3 full nights. They gave me nasty rice porridge to eat. It was awful.
I remember visiting you that night, and I don't know if maybe Bethany was with me in the car, or maybe someone was. But to visit you, and we saw you in not the operating room, but the room that you were like sleeping in and where you were resting.
Yeah.
And you looked like so pale, like you just looked so worn out. And I knew from the look you gave me, I don't know if you said this, but it was pretty much like, yeah, I'm getting out of this country.
Yeah, I spent some time, calling my family members back home, and I was really just like, I don't want to die in a foreign country. And that was really the tipping point. That really set me over the edge. Mm-hmm. But the good news was that this entire excursion, ambulance, anesthesia, medication, 3 nights in the hospital, it was around $600 total. And then after the jet's accident insurance, I think out of pocket, I had to pay maybe $50 or something. So
insane.
That was really, really good news. But
yeah,
I did have to stay with like 3 or 4 other old Japanese men in the same room though for those 3 days.
That was fun.
I didn't have my own room. Yeah. But
that's for the rich people.
It was tough, but that's the steak incident.
That's the steak incident. That's the inciting action that caused you to leave Japan.
It was the tipping point, really.
Or maybe you getting together with Sam. So I don't know.
That also.
No, I take absolute credit for that.
Oh, setting them up?
Yes, that was me. I take all credit.
That was a fun.
Better be mentioned in your wedding vows.
Well, when we bring her on, we can share the confession story. I think would be funny.
Oh,
but you totally.
That can.
I don't know if I've ever heard
that'll involve Ray as well in that one. So, but we do have one more ambulance story. If Ray, it's your turn. We've gone around the circle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I won't keep it so long-winded, but it was basically when we went to Hokkaido.
Oh.
I think you guys talked about that trip with Bethany, but you didn't mention that we went skiing. Obviously, that's like something people do when you go to Hokkaido. You eat crab, you go skiing, you go to the snow festival. That's like what you do in Hokkaido. So we go skiing.
Town of Otaru.
Yep, exactly.
That's the town. I just came up with that song.
I should have known better, I had already torn my meniscus before. So I should have known.
While you were in Japan or before coming to Japan?
Before Japan. Yeah. So I should have known that skiing would not be the sport for me. And I think I did know. But, you know, I let the FOMO get to me. Everybody else was skiing. I was like, what am I going to do while they're all skiing? I might as well just go too. So I go. We're skiing. If you insert that video of Ike filming me when I was unable to stop and laughing at me, I think that would be like top tier content. Just insert that.
I'll send it.
Yeah, send it over.
Break!
So it's going bad. I am unable to stop. It's not the sport for me. And eventually on my last run, I go down the hill, can't stop. I fall, and I just feel my poor meniscus knee again, just a pop. And I was like, I cannot get up. My knee pops, and I'm like, I can't walk. So Paige goes and like tries to inform everyone that I cannot walk, and we're telling everybody. And one of our people ends up having to carry me to the, I don't even know, like some sort of room
there's a gondola though as well.
There was a lodge like halfway up the mountain.
Yeah.
And then you went to that one, right? And there was an emergency room.
Yeah. So, well, I went like at the bottom of the hill. There was like some sort of room where employees were, and I was carried there. And they're like looking at it and trying to touch it and trying to take my boot off. And I'm just like, please stop. Like everything you're doing hurts so bad. Like, please.
Dame.
They wanted you to take off your rental ski gear.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was
rental ski gear.
They wanted you to take it off before going to the hospital.
So it was like a whole thing. They take me up in the gondola, like up to the top of the hill. They have me on like the whole stretcher thing. All these people are watching. So embarrassing. Horrible. 0 out of 10 content.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. When the ambulance crew gets off of the gondola with their stretcher and loads you onto it.
I think there's a picture of me sitting there like this. Just covering my face because I just didn't want to be
and then everyone was watching your cable car gondola go down and like, I wonder if she's dead.
They had shut down the gondola just for Ray to get her emergency lift down the mountain.
Horrible.
Yeah, I don't envy you.
Yeah, it was a whole thing. But we get into the ambulance, and then we hear that the people from the ski resort are just calling, not to ask if I'm okay, but to be like, yo, can we have that rental equipment back? The jacket and the pants that she's wearing. She rented those from us. Can we have those back? Yeah, but that ambulance, they weren't really asking me a bunch of questions because like they were there. They knew what happened. So it wasn't a whole thing. We went to the hospital. I think they took like a CT scan and an X-ray, and the doctor was like trying to mess with it, and I was like, please stop touching me. Like it hurts so bad. Whatever you're doing, stop. And so they gave me like a knee brace and some crutches with an ice spike on them. Because remember, we're in Hokkaido. Snow and ice everywhere.
I think that's the sickest part of this story is that you had ice spikes on the bottom of your crutches.
I had ice spikes on the bottom of my crutches. And when we were returning home and going to the airport, and I had these crutches, I like get up to where you're checking your luggage and stuff, and they're looking at my crutches, and they're like, you can't take that on the plane.
Oh my god.
And I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, the spikes, it's like a weapon. You can't take that on the plane. And I was like, well, I don't have a screwdriver on my person. I can't take them off. So then it was like the flight attendants running around the airport trying to find a screwdriver so they can take the ice picks off the bottom of my crutches. A whole thing. But
and I mean the jet accident insurance also paid for the majority of that, right? And
they did.
The thing was though is when you got back to Oita, I think the story doesn't even end. The legacy of the crutches continues though.
Yeah, I had to I was I guess renting the crutches. I wasn't aware that that was a thing. I feel like in the US, if you get crutches, you just keep them. But in Japan, you have to give them back. So I'm in Oita, and I now have to figure out how to mail these crutches back.
Oh my gosh.
To Hokkaido, so that
Another trip
they
to the
will
post
give me my
office.
money back.
How does that
so
even
I went to the
work?
post office.
Yeah.
It was so funny. I went to the post office and I was like explaining the situation to them. I'm amazed that I could even explain that in Japanese, by the way. But explaining the situation to them, and they're looking at my crutches, look at the boxes, and they're like. So they ended up having to like tape 3 different boxes together and get them to fit. But it worked. I sent it back, and the hospital reimbursed me for the crutches, and then I also got reimbursed again through jet accident insurance for the crutches.
Cool.
So I kind of got double reimbursed.
Okay.
Some extra money.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Probably a little bit dishonest, but it's
I mean,
fine.
pays
Well,
for
you
the
went-
tatami.
It pays for you shipping the crutches back.
True.
Yeah.
That as
It wasn't
well.
as expensive as I thought it was going to be, but yeah, it was crazy.
Domestic mail in Japan was pretty cheap. It only started to get really pricey when you would send things abroad.
But I mean, going all the
sending
way
things
from
back home is
Hokkaido.
cursed.
Yeah.
Sending things back home is cursed. I have this tatami roll. Speaking of tatami, this tatami roll and the staff that's currently holding my GoPro, I wrapped up in a coworker's like Haagen-Dazs plastic tablecloth from the back of her car with a bunch of tape like all the way around it. It looked like a Harry Potter broomstick, like he's opening up the Nimbus 3000. And we're like sitting there cracking ourselves up in the post office like, this is never going to work. We go back up to the desk and they're like, okay, cool, here we go. And it got back to my house like a week after I did.
Yeah, it actually gets to you very, very quickly.
They're good.
It was very
I
expensive
think
though.
my stuff got home before I left, and I sent it before I got back. My stuff got home. And I
That's-
sent it like maybe the week before I left.
If you're
Yeah.
not doing just shipping like on a boat, then that EMS mail is pretty quick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think my packages, I think one was like 40 pounds and one was 25. And I think together they were like $800 US or something. Just for the two.
It is expensive.
Just for those two
For the
Is this when they were
packages.
switching up the packages?
That was when they messed up the sizing of the packages and where they were going, and
That's
it was rough. But yeah, when I shipped those two back, it was very expensive. Like, and that was the other thing too, is they mislabeled me. Is they like overcharged me, and I was like, this is not right, because the lady had like quoted me earlier or something, and so they were overcharging me by like $300, and then so it went down from like $1,100 to
Crazy.
$800. But yeah.
Love the
It was-
post office.
It was tough. Yeah, we I guess we needed the post office though, an integral part of
Definitely.
Japan.
Yeah, that is definitely something for the viewers to know. If you plan on sending stuff home, like heavy things, it is going to be expensive.
Very, very expensive. Rihanna, I wanted to ask you, shifting gears here a little bit. There's a very interesting experience that you had whilst in the JET program that involves a water bottle tycoon.
I don't know if I'm familiar with this one.
You're definitely
You
familiar.
definitely are.
You definitely are, Ike. Big water bottle paid you a lot of money.
Oh,
Yeah,
I don't know I don't know even if they paid you at all, but please.
Yeah, we were actually in a water bottle commercial. We filmed a whole like professional shoot for a commercial for a water bottle company.
can you find that
called-
commercial? Did you have it?
Yeah,
It's on YouTube.
Yeah, it's on YouTube. Yeah,
We should really,
You can absolutely-
insert.
Yeah,
We'll put a
insert
link
here.
or it'll be
It's
somewhere.
Yeah, it's like 30 seconds long, and we filmed it for an entire day. It's like crazy. But it was like one of our friends that we met prior to Jet. She was living in Japan with her husband, and he was looking for models, and she's like, I know some people, and she asked us, and I think we didn't think it was like a professional thing when it was like pitched to us. We thought it was just, I don't know, I was thinking like maybe he's in grad school or something and it's like a project, he has to film a commercial. Come to find out, no, this is like an actual commercial with an actual film crew, a makeup crew. We had a trailer. It was like a whole thing, a 3 a.m. call time.
Whoa.
And we were just filming until like quite late in the day.
And this was in Miyazaki Prefecture, correct?
Yes, we filmed it in Miyazaki Prefecture. It's a lovely commercial.
It
30 seconds for like several hours of my
Very
day.
funny.
And it was really hot too. But it was so funny because we were filming just outside in normal places. And so, you know, there's just people, you know, out minding their business, and they're looking at us and they see all these cameras and these film crews. And I see people like taking pictures of us with their phones because they think we're famous people or something.
That's awesome.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
It was really
he
funny.
even sponsored us though to come to a festival in Miyazaki.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had like a second, I don't know, like promotional thing.
Yeah.
It was like some sort of music festival.
It was a
They had
fireworks
stand.
festival. Han-kun was there. T was there. Oh my gosh. Everyone
Yeah.
was there.
Tea.
And we were giving
Tea
out
was there.
free water bottles. And they were the artisan water bottles that you guys had done the commercial for. And you guys were wearing the
Yeah.
T-shirts. It was totally like a weird... It was kind of weird. I don't know.
It was kind of weird.
Uh,
We had one lady come up to us who was very strange. She had seen us when we were filming the commercial, and then she also saw us again there. And it was just very awkward. She wanted to take a picture of us, but she was just a very...
were you filming right nearby where the festival was?
Yeah, it wasn't too far
So
from there.
this would be like near
Yeah.
Aoshima?
Yeah.
Aoshima?
Aoshima.
Yeah, in Miyazaki.
Yeah.
Big surfing area. Yeah.
Yeah.
A
It was
lot of
Completely
surfer bros.
different vibe in Japan. Everybody's like super chill in Miyazaki.
It was
Yeah, we did a
cool
karaoke
festival, though,
competition.
yeah.
It was weird. Yeah.
So I heard about this festival as being just a karaoke competition. So when I
That is
heard,
the way it was advertised to us as well.
Ray, Bethany, and a few others are going to go down and do this karaoke competition. They're going to be handing out free water bottles, and they need a couple extra hands. So come help out, have a good time, and maybe participate in the karaoke competition. Ike and I had to leave later than everyone else. So like everyone else in this group that was going down and giving out water bottles were like already down there. And by the time we got off work, it was like we were rushing to get down there. And we were so confused because no one was answering their phones.
And then all we received was a text, and I think Ray was like, "I'm about to like go on the karaoke or something." And
So we're driving down the
We're-
road, and I'm trying to remain calm, and I'm like, we're gonna miss Rihanna singing. She's such a good singer in the karaoke competition. She's gonna win the competition, and we're gonna miss it. And we're like, nobody's answering us.
we were so lost. We parked pretty far away and just started like running down the beach.
Yeah,
like we have
so
we have
sweaty.
like Google coordinates, like
Yeah.
the chords on our phone, and we're like running down the beach to try to get to this thing. And like we couldn't even see it until we got really close, and we pull up, and it's more of like there's probably like 100 people there, but it's like food stalls.
Yeah,
it's
it's
like
like-
food
Yeah.
stalls, and then they had like a big stage, but for the karaoke
far
competition, it was basically just
Far.
one of the like food stalls.
Yeah.
It was like
Yeah.
It was like
It was no bigger than
There was no stage.
than the
It
squid
was just-
stall.
There was probably like 10 people standing around
A few
it. Like all the
chairs.
other people were just minding their business.
But
in
when Ray
different
sang
parts.
though, she got quite the audience. Garenge's
That is not
performance.
true.
When Ray sang Garenge, there was a crowd.
That is false.
There was. And my
There was no
famous
crowd.
Love Story by Taylor Swift, everyone was watching that.
I mean,
I loved it.
Everyone
much
saw that.
much better crowd than when I sang Unravel. We'll say that.
I
But
don't
she a
understand
ten?
why. I
Tell me
did
about it.
technically actually win the
you had the highest
competition.
score, even according
did
to
have
the
the highest score.
automated like.
And what did
judging.
you get for winning?
I got a ticket to get free food from one of the food stalls at the place.
Amen.
That's so depressing.
Oh, that's funny.
They really just like built this thing up. They made it seem like we were gonna be on the main stage.
Yeah.
Like
That's
it was
what
gonna be a
I
whole
thought.
thing.
That's what we all thought.
That's how it was presented to us.
So we're like running up and we get there and it's just like everyone hanging out in a tent, like handing out water bottles. We're like, did we miss her? Did we miss Ray singing? And then Ray's in the back. She's like, you're like, I'm right here.
It's like we can go whenever we want. It was just like
It's
walking
not like
over
a
to the
time
karaoke.
Oh God. Those situations are funny when you think something's really big and important, but it realizes it's just no big deal. And then it's like, oh, it's whatever.
I feel like it ended up being a lot of fun.
Yeah,
because it was very chill.
Great vibes. Great vibes. And the concert at the end was interesting.
Yeah, the concert was definitely interesting is the word.
But I mean, I'll say big shout outs to the guy that sponsored that because he allowed all of us to come, and he even you all had hotel rooms as well, and then we stayed in this really bad
weird
Airbnb.
place.
It was.
Oh yeah, we found fish scales in the bathtub because people like fishermen were coming in and cleaning their fish.
Yeah, it was. And there was like we couldn't find blankets anywhere, and we were looking around, and it was really sketchy to be honest. But
I had a great night in Miyazaki though.
It's true.
We did.
The first time,
they paid for us to go out.
They-
Where did we go? We went to some hostess club or
that
something.
was the first and last time I ever went to a hostess club.
Yeah, he was
the
a
first
fan
time.
of hostess clubs. The guy
But
who sponsored.
So for those of you that aren't familiar, a hostess club, they have people like that will sit at your table and like make a conversation with you. They'll pour your drinks for you, like things of that nature. But we had a bigger group. I think there were maybe like 10 of us or something. And so we get assigned like one hostess at this smaller club. And
A lot of English speakers in our party.
yes.
Not
and,
so many in the hostess party.
And we ignore our hostess basically.
No.
She's sitting there and I mean, we would rather like talk amongst ourselves, you know, and she's kind of just sitting there awkwardly, but she was very observant because as soon as our drinks would get like maybe half or a little more full, she would run over and like re-pour it for us. But yeah, that was the only time I ever did that.
That room was kind of interesting because you have half the people trying to sing karaoke, and the other half trying to speak English but not being able to, or speaking Japanese that I don't understand. That was also the night of the earthquake. That was the first earthquake I experienced in Japan, and it was like, wow, crazy.
We were all just kind of standing there, and it shook. The ground shook a little bit, and we were like, "Is that it?"
But the buildings even shook because we were in the street, and we were in this kind of alley, and you could
busy
see
street, a lot of
buildings
nightlife.
Actually shaking. Everyone's phone gets their emergency alert. Like
you
at
hear
the
it
same
like
time.
travel down the street, and everyone looks at their phone, and they're like, "What?" And then it starts shaking.
Yeah, it
Also,
happens before, maybe like 2 or 3 seconds before the earthquake actually happens as well.
I would like to point out that none of us had an ounce of a survival instinct because we just stood there. Like if it was an actual like really bad earthquake, we would have been crushed by the buildings. None of us made an attempt.
We had to believe in Japanese architecture.
Yeah.
We had to believe.
And that's not something to believe in. I don't really
Water Bottle Tycoon-san led us into the hostess bar, and then I'm like, I thought we were just taking shelter in here, but we're actually sitting down.
Yeah, and a lot of those are like pay for how long you're there.
Yeah.
So you're not actually paying for each drink. You're actually just paying for every 30 minutes that you stay. Whereas some of the other bars where it's like all you can drink, it's just like a flat rate. So those I think can be a bit of a trap for some people too, that they don't realize that they're getting charged for every like minute that they stay in there. So you can definitely leave one of those places with like a much bigger bill than you're expecting.
But maybe if you're a little lonely and you need the conversation and you can speak Japanese, that might be a good place.
You have to be able to speak Japanese.
Yeah, that's
I think.
not a lot.
He also, I think, bought like a $400 bottle of champagne that was disgusting.
Interesting night.
Yeah.
Very weird night.
Now, I don't know. Are we getting to the end of our
Yeah,
time here with Ray?
we might want to think about wrapping it up.
Yeah.
Are there any other final thoughts, Ray? Anything you want to say?
Am I supposed to answer the desk-warming question?
Oh, thank you for bringing that up. I almost completely, definitely forgot. So, Rayana, during your time as a Japanese teacher, an ALT, assistant language teacher for the English program at your school, were you ever faced with a lot of downtime? And if so, what did you do with that desk warming?
I think I had more desk-warming time than all of you combined.
Oh, no.
I did a number of things. There was some studying of Japanese. I studied Korean. I studied some Thai before I went to Thailand. I did some online classes about international student advising. So I did some classes about visa advising, F1 student advising. Did some of those. I did some reading. I was reading a fantasy book in Spanish to prepare before I went to Spain. Sometimes it was just Reddit, honestly. When I didn't have the brain power to do those other things, it was just Reddit. Or we went through a pretty bad Vampire Survivors.
Oh,
because of Ray, I got addicted to Vampire
She made me
Survivors
download
as
it.
well.
It was bad.
I blame you.
There was a time when that was a thing as well. Which guys, don't play video games at your desk. Okay?
You might be
Don't do
tempted.
that.
It's very easy.
It was a good month, I would say, that we were all just playing Vampire Survivors during every break.
I won't say not to do it. It won't come from my mouth.
You watch your Shingeki no Kyojin and you got your Shingeki no Kyojin shirt, and if you watching your anime at school, brother, what's going on?
Yeah, I wasn't probably the best model, but is that where you also applied to your master's program, Ray, during school?
I did, yeah. I wrote my essays for my master's application during my downtime.
So there's a lot you can do, and
there is a lot you can do. You can choose to be productive or unproductive. I won't judge you either way, honestly.
When people when people decide not to use you for a class, like a teacher who should be bringing you to class, take that time back.
Because every day there's either 6 or 7 periods depending on your school, and I think in your case, Ray, it was only a few times a week some weeks where you would actually have a class, whereas
I think crazy to me.
My typical load was maybe 3 classes every day, and then 4 periods of free time was what I would typically have. So
yeah, my first year, that was my schedule, 3 to 4 classes every day.
But you're saying it dropped off?
Yeah, with the change of the teachers came a change in the utility of the ALT. I was very much in charge of the English club, though. That was my thing. I did everything. And I loved my little English club.
And that's actually after school as well, right?
Yeah, and I was not paid for that, by the way. Did not at all get compensated.
And you
for that
should be getting
at
compensated for your time working after school.
I didn't get
don't
paid
do
either.
what I did. You should have been compensated.
I only got
for that,
compensated for half.
I never got paid either, Ray, because I would do it every other week, every other week for Thursdays after school.
Yeah, mine was Thursdays, almost every Thursday, except if they were having exams or whatever.
Yeah.
It's funny. I tried to get my English club started up at one of my schools, and it went from, actually I went in and there was only one guy, and he got kind of embarrassed because all the attention was on him, and I was just trying to talk to him in English. And it was over after that.
My English club was a lot of very fun students, students that were really energetic, but maybe only half of them actually wanted to use English in the English club, and the other half were just there to maybe hang out with the ALT or
They're just there for
kind
the
of
vibe.
That's what
fun.
that's what it was like at my other school.
So and I wouldn't pressure them, so they would just speak Japanese the whole time, and good opportunity for me to use it as well. So can't complain there.
I like all of my activities were in English, but if we were just chatting, if they wanted to chat in Japanese, it was fine.
Yeah. And you would come up with all those activities then as well, Ray?
Yes, I made all of my own activities for the most part. Occasionally, if I was feeling really like, bro, I don't have anything. I don't have anything. I would find something online. But for the most part, I liked to make
a lot of resources out there.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, good stuff. Ike, you want to sign us off?
Sure.
Would you like a little guest appearance from a certain someone?
We almost forgot.
Wait, who is it?
It is a little certain someone. I'll go get her really quick. She wants to say hi.
Oh my gosh, I hope it's like...
I hope it's Kumamon.
I hope it's like Baby Yoda. Grogu.
Does Kumamon have a gender?
No.
Genderless. Interesting.
Like a Pokemon. Some of them.
Oh.
But
there's only one Kumamon.
Rotom. There's only one Kumamon.
Does that mean if Kumamon dies, there'll never be another?
Oh!
This is Nyla.
She's so cute.
Nyla?
Yes, her name is Nyla. While I was in Japan, my family decided they were going to get a puppy. So
they missed you so much, Ray, that they had to replace you.
She looks like a little Kumamon, kind of. Or she looks like a little Ewok.
She's very calm right now because I woke her up. She was sleeping.
Oh, so cute. What kind of dog is she?
She is a teacup Pomeranian.
She looks like she could fit in a teacup.
She is very incredibly small.
Oh my gosh. She's adorable.
Well,
she just wanted to sign you guys out.
Oh,
Ray, Nyla.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure. Thank you for joining this week's podcast. We'll have another.
Thank you for having me.
Another guest on next week as well for some more insights about the JET program. But thank you.
Thanks, y'all.
Bye.